Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this rules workshop. I'm Amelia Boyd, and I am the program manager for the Commission and the organizer for this webinar. This meeting is being recorded and will be made available sometime next week. The documents which will be discussed here today are available in the handout section and on our website, which is wmc.wa.gov. All attendees are muted. Panelists may unmute themselves and share their webcam. Attendees, if you have a question, please use the raise your hand function or use the question section, and we will get to your questions as quickly as possible. Right now, I will begin the roll call of panelists and staff. When I call your name, please introduce yourself. So first, Heather, if you would go ahead.
Yeah, this is Heather Carter. I'm an Assistant Attorney General and Legal Advisor to the Commission.
And Dr. Domino.
Hello, I'm Karen Domino. I'm a commissioner. I'm an anesthesiologist.
And Melanie.
Hello, I'm Melanie DeLeon. I'm the Executive Director of the Medical Commission.
And Mr. Farrell.
I'm Michael Farrell. I'm the Policy Development Manager for the Medical Commission.
Teresa.
Hello, I'm Teresa Schimmels. I'm a Physician Assistant Commissioner on the Medical Commission.
And Dr. Yu. Oh, we can't hear you, Dr. Yu. So we'll come back. So Dr. Small, if you would go ahead and introduce yourself and then go on to read the script, please.
Okay, this is Dr. Robert Small. I'm a psychiatrist and also a commissioner. So I will be the presiding officer for this rules workshop. Today is Monday, August 9th, 2021, and it is 1:02 p.m. This meeting is being held via the GoToWebinar platform. The rule being discussed today is regarding our proposed clinical support program. The pre-proposal rules package was filed in the Washington State Register as 18-06-007 on February 22nd, 2018. First, we will discuss the comments that have been previously submitted. The first is from Dr. J. Kimber Rochford.
So the comment is in the packet and it's also on your screen. And the reason we're talking about the comments before we're talking about the draft language is because I think it might help us answer some of these questions when we get to the draft language. So you can review this comment and then discuss if you would like.
How's everybody doing? Can we scroll a little more? I see Teresa nodding. I can't see everybody, but yeah, maybe go ahead and just try and scroll a little bit more, Amelia. Let me know when y'all are ready to see some more. Teresa says yes. Okay. Scroll a little more.
Hi, Amelia. Can we enlarge this just a little bit
Let me see if I can.
and make it
It's a little
easier on the
small.
eye? Oh,
Oh,
that's
well,
great.
that's
Thank
good.
you so much.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
having trouble
great.
too. I'm just putting my face up against the screen here.
Sorry about
Thank
that.
you. I got an aging eye.
If I scroll a little bit more. Okay. Do any of the panel members have any comments they'd like to make regarding Dr. Rochford's comments? I will comment because I noticed the one comment he had in bold was his recommendation for elimination of STIs, which of course, regardless of our own personal opinions about those are in regulation. So that is not a recommendation we can take up. Anybody else? Any comments about Dr. Rochford's letter? I am hearing none. So I think we can go on to the comment from David Bihar, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly.
So this comment is more informational than anything else. You don't have to discuss it. They don't really have a lot of input for the draft language. They're just telling us basically that we shouldn't be doing this. So, and also I believe this is from a doctor in Pennsylvania. So, and I did explain to him, which you would see in the comment, that, you know, this is only affecting Washington MDs and PAs. And so, but I don't think he was satisfied with that response. So I'm going to go to the beginning of the comment. This is actually the end of the email string.
I think you can probably go up a little. Ready to see some more? Amelia, do we happen to know if he has a Washington license?
Not that I could find.
He does not.
So I think there's more to scroll to.
Sorry, I had to step away for a moment. Is this the same comment from, okay, thank you.
Okay, so is this the final comment in this string, Amelia? Or there's more? Okay. Okay. Would
And
any
that's
of the
the end of
panel,
that one.
would any of the panel like to comment on this? I think we
My only
we
comment
should.
is it sounds a little threatening towards the end there. But the statement itself, I don't think is necessarily pertinent to what we're trying to achieve.
Agree. Okay, I think that we can move on then. The next comment is from PA Jennifer Van Atta. So I assume, Amelia, that what's in what looks like red is what she's suggesting as an addition. Okay. We scroll down a bit. Okay. We can scroll down a bit more. Okay. A little more. I think we can scroll down a bit more. Everybody okay to scroll a little more? So she obviously makes a number of recommendations here. You folks want to go through and discuss these now? So comments about the first suggestion here, adding that phrase has been reported to the commission by complaint or mandatory report.
Seemed fine to me. It clarifies it.
I agree.
And just keeping in mind, obviously, that any of these modifications we make both to the physician and the PA rule. We have a consensus to add this. Do we need to actually vote on this, Amelia, or can we just do this by consensus?
I think you can wait until we discuss the draft language. I'm going to add any edits that you like to the
Great.
draft, and then we can talk about them
Okay.
later.
Okay, that sounds good. So I think we have a consensus to add this. So when you're ready, Amelia, you can scroll down a bit more. I know you need to add that to the draft first.
Is this a phrase to qualify modifier for the or qualifier for the practice concern? Because a practice concern is conducted that has been reported. It seems to read a little awkward, whatever you can later on. Another thing is the practice concern at currently the commission do not get any other way, right? Is without saying is reported by either by mandatory or complaint, right? There's no other way.
Yeah, so I think that's true, but I think we have to remember those of us inside the commission understand that, but folks outside the commission may not really know that.
Yeah, I think it clarifies it for the general PA and physician group and the public.
Next is, looks like it's under sub 4 there. She suggests that sub A, the alleged practice concern does not pose an imminent threat to the life or safety of patients under the practitioner's care.
Mike, didn't we have this somewhere else in this already, like at the beginning intro part?
Yeah, the beginning is that if continues, it would. So even the concerns raised to the commission does not pose an immediate threat, but if it continue, it may. So as I said from the first sentence, imply that it would rise to the level of, the commission would think about the eligibility for the support program. Is that right?
Yeah, so there is, Amelia, just scroll back to that where it says, if continued, could result in a violation of the UDA. And we've obviously gone back and forth on this language quite a bit, but I would say that if we limit it to an imminent threat to life or safety of the patients, that does not necessarily cover the breadth of the UDA.
Right.
So
Agree.
Yeah. I would say because based on the first paragraph, we don't need this A, number A.
Agree.
Agree.
I think we're, all right, I think we're all in agreement. Okay. So our next point is to delete the physician assistant, or on the, for the physician, or physician agrees to participate as a criteria for eligibility. And I would welcome any comments on that.
Well, the number 4, item 4, it said the commission shall use the following criteria to determine eligibility for the supporting program. And even the physician, the providers disagree with the participation, we still have to go through the first process to decide whether the person is eligibility, right? If the person is eligible for the program, then I assume the next step is whether the provider would accept it or not. So that seems like a separate step. That sentence crossed out.
And I think that's the point that she was making here, actually, that seeing if the practitioner agrees to participate should come after eligibility has been determined.
Right, that's what I was thinking.
Then we would be potentially looking at just moving that particular line to another place. I think, Amelia, what in the draft rule, what comes after this sub 4? So that, that
Moved.
particular line about if we want to move it would actually go after sub B there.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Want to maybe, put it in there for now, Amelia, and then we can come back to it when we look at the actual draft.
Okay.
Okay, great. I think we can move on to what's, go ahead, John.
Oh, Bob and Amelia, do we remove the A, number A, item number A under 4? It's at next upper page.
Yeah. Yes, so it's
The
not
A,
in our,
did we removed?
yeah, it's not in our current draft, so we're not going to add it in.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Any thoughts about this?
Seems fine to me.
Strikes me as just an alternate way of wording what was already there. I don't have any.
Sorry, Dr. Small, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Yes, I agree. I think it's just alternate wording. It's just a different way of putting it.
Do we have a preference between her suggestion and the way that it currently is in the draft?
Amelia, I have a question.
Mhm.
And this is maybe Mike can. I thought we kind of revamped this whole thing and made it guidance and nothing, no findings, so that it would change this almost drastically. Is that not the case still?
I thought we did as well, but the document doesn't necessarily reflect that.
No, I know. That's why I'm asking Mike Farrell. We talked about this at an exec meeting, and Mike and you drafted a new document, I thought.
Yeah, Micah did. And I understood it was sent to Amelia. Do you have that
Mhm.
document, Amelia?
I do have
Okay.
that, but right now we're
Well-
talking about the comments, and we're going to talk about that new draft when we talk about the draft.
Well, I know, but we're going through a lot of time and effort that may be overcome by the new draft. So,
That's true.
I mean,
Yeah,
I
I agree, Melanie. I'd rather deal with the new draft than to go through sentence by sentence when things were changed.
right. We got feedback from some stakeholders regarding this whole program, and basically, well, and Mike can talk about it. He and Micah drafted. Basically, the whole thing is just going to be a letter of guidance that is voluntary, both ways, no findings. The physician and PA can either do it or not do it, and we're not really following up. It's just a letter of guidance. To allay any due process issues, any reportable issues, any other kinds of legal issues.
So do you want to discuss that new draft now and then come back to the comments?
Yeah, so given the new draft, which I was not aware of, and it does change the whole thrust of this, I think that it would be best to look at the new draft first and then come back to comments, see where they fit.
Agree.
So one question for Melanie and Mike as we're looking at this, because as you know all too well, one of our problems has been that we don't have any authorization from the legislature to issue a letter of concern or a letter of education or various words. So we're going to run into trouble now with a letter of guidance because we don't have any authorization from the legislature for that.
Well, I believe, and Mike, you can correct me if I'm wrong, or Heather, actually, this is just, it's like an A3 closure letter, but sort of different. I mean, it's basically what that is right now. And it's just a letter to say, we found these things, there's some options for you. It's not discipline, it's not anything other than education. And part of our mission is education. And I think that this would fall under that. So Heather, if you want to chime in.
Yes, so I guess, you're going to have to draft these very carefully and not gonna, you're gonna have to stick to whatever template comes up and not sort of mess with it. You're not gonna be able to say, we found these things
Right.
wrong or anything like that. You could say you had a complaint, regarding bad record keeping. We're closing the complaint. Here's some resources on record, educational opportunities for record keeping. I worry that this, I do have concerns that this could lead to something that would be problematic, but so it's going to be a fine line, I guess. You're going to have to really draft these carefully.
Right, and we say in 2 that a clinical support letter does not represent a commission finding. So we want to make that very clear. This is not a finding by any stretch of the imagination.
And so that all makes sense to me in terms of defining boundaries. Again, I just want to make sure we're not wading into territory where someone in the legislature comes back and says, you can't do that. We didn't authorize you to do this.
Well, there are two commissions that actually have working clinical support programs. One is nursing
Right.
and one is Chiro. So and we're not even going to go to the level that they go. We've backed it up a lot and just made it a letter of guidance.
So let's take a look at the new draft then.
It's on the left.
Correct. Maybe we can just
Well-
kind of scroll, go through the whole thing, then we can come back and comment on any individual parts. I just kind of want to get a feeling for the whole thing here.
So what I gathered from Melanie said, this is pretty much the same as A3 closure letter. It just we finalize it in a writing, right? Provide more detailed guidelines. Is that correct?
If I could respond, an A3 closure letter is simply a letter explaining why a case was closed and it doesn't fit under the other closure codes. It's really not meant to be expressing a concern about the respondent's practice. So what this will do, if it's put into rule, it will provide you a firm foundation for issuing a letter of guidance. And the A3 closure letter can go back to being simply a letter saying, we're closing for this reason that doesn't fit within any of the other codes. This is a cleaner way and a more legal way to offer advice in a closure letter.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Can you offer more advice? I mean, you can direct people to educational materials or, and that. A3 closures often are very brief.
Is this this draft? I'm just not finding it in any of the packets.
I
Heather.
can add it to the handouts section, right?
Okay, yeah, because it's the
It
first
was-
I'm seeing it, and I can't see all of it. So
Yeah, it came to me after the packet went out.
The other thing I think that this does, and again, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, if we close a complaint below threshold, I think you could also send out a letter of guidance, whereas an A3 closure is really only for those that have gone through an investigation.
Right.
Okay.
And Heather's right about this being a fine line. And Dr. Domino just mentioned suggesting education. We have to be careful there because, as Melanie said, you can't have a finding, but you also can't have a sanction either, because you don't have due process with either one.
I think though, Mike, we can say, here are some resources for you should you want to pursue more education in this manner. So, I mean, we're not saying you have to take this course. We're saying, here are 4 courses that, actually might help you if you would so choose to do it. So we're making it very open and just saying, here are some resources for you.
Right.
Amelia,
Okay,
can you
draft.
scroll down
Sorry.
the new draft a little bit more?
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, that's it,
And
okay.
it's in the handouts now.
Okay. So how about we go back to the beginning of the new draft then, and we can see if there's any discussion. We'll start with sub 1.
I'll just say
So,
one thing. We like the
yeah.
word guidance because as opposed to concern. we all can use guidance, you know, and ways to help us in our practices. And it seemed like a more positive way of saying rather than identifying a concern. Okay, so that's why that word guidance is there rather than concern.
Great, a great comment. So I'm hung up a little bit on the second sentence. The alleged practice concerns must be addressed through education or practice changes or both. Maybe the alleged practice concerns can be addressed through education or practice changes or both.
Yeah, I like can be.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a, sorry, go ahead, Dr. Mano. Go ahead.
Karen?
Yeah, that's also what I saw. The sentence read must be addressed, and then on the second paragraph it said a clinical support letter does not represent a commission funding. I understand, you know, what that means is funding, but if you say you must, then anyone read this that if it must address it, you must have some funding that concerns you.
Yeah,
even though you
want
didn't go through the process, it's an allegation.
Yeah, it shouldn't be must. It's a voluntary thing. It can be.
Would may instead of can
Works.
be better, or do you think that's the same?
I initially thought may, but I don't know what is best.
Yeah, I like that better too, Dr. Domino.
A question for you all, including Mike and Melody, since we're talking about this as primarily an educational tool, do we want to include practice changes in there? Or should we just say address through education?
Yes.
I think you should
Yeah.
just say education. I mean, I think you should make it
Yeah.
as positive as possible.
Yeah, I agree.
Agree.
Any other comments on paragraph section 1 there?
So this is Heather. I do, as I read through this more, the talking about practice concerns, that term is bothering me. Maybe we can just, I don't know that we need to work on it right now, but you're talking about practice concerns, but
You
saying
say
it's not a
practice
letter of
improvement.
concern. So I think it, you know, it reads
Or
like this is a letter of
practice
concern in different clothing.
Well, I think, Heather, that we're saying somebody's filed a complaint against a provider for some issue that is, I mean, you call it whatever you want it, a concern or an issue. It could be communication, it could be discrimination, it could be, you name it. But it doesn't rise to the level of action that we want to take. But we want to say, hey, you know, here's some education on that issue. I guess use it at your own, you know, whatever, but I don't know how you say that because it is a concern that was brought to our attention. It's not a concern necessarily that the commission had.
Because I don't know if this helps, Heather, but the fact that the word alleged is in there help.
So I'm just thinking, trying to think this through from the practitioner's standpoint and that, you know, for a risk, what the risk the commission would have. And I just see that you're sending this out. And again, you're saying we have identified a practice concern or there's been an alleged practice concern that the respondent isn't getting a chance to, in a public record or in a public forum, respond to that or refute that. And so that's where the due process concern would be.
But only if we're making a finding, Heather. I mean, if we're saying someone filed a complaint against you that you were rude, we're not saying you're rude. We're not making a finding that you were rude. However, if you know, want to you know, take a course in communication, here's one for you, but we're not saying it was a problem.
Well, you kind of are if you're saying we addressed it, we're not just going to close it, but we're going to say that there's this alleged concern and that you need to do some education, or that we
No,
offer
not
some
saying that.
education.
We're not saying we're not closing it. We're not saying you need to do anything. We're saying a
Well-
complaint was filed about this issue. Here's some we've closed the complaint. The complaint's closed. We're taking no action on it.
Well, then why the letter? I mean, the letter
To
of
make them
guidance isn't going to
better.
be. Yeah, I know, but I just have concerns, and I can provide advice at a different forum.
I mean, perhaps
in that-
wordsmithing it might work better with that, and what kind of legalese language you would need. I think the feeling was there, sometimes you want to say, give some advice to somebody about, you know, maybe they need to improve their communication, but we're not going to do anything about it. And so to make it, you know, if someone wants to hear about that, I mean, it's one of the areas I lectured in. How do you talk to patients? You know, like that's stuff that a lot of people don't get these days. You know, from the old days, they get it in school now. So I think it's just to be able to be, to say something about it with more detail than, gee, there was a complaint, we closed it.
Yeah. Well, Heather talked about the due process. So if they believe that there's no due process in this, and then say, if you have no funding, just an allegation, I'm not going to go through it. So
They don't
then,
have to, it's voluntary.
right? So they don't have to.
It
So
doesn't
even
appear
commission
they have a
has
choice
concerns.
if this letter goes out. This letter would go out whether or not the respondent agreed to the letter, right?
Yeah, they don't have to agree at all. Then therefore they don't have to sign, you know, agree the education, anything.
They don't have to do anything. They could throw it in the wastebasket.
Right.
But it will be a public record.
Well, it will be, it's not going to be posted on the website. It'll be public if someone asks for the information. It's not going to be out there for anyone to look it up.
Can I make a suggestion? And this may not allay Heather's concerns about due process, but these are a lot of paragraphs for one simple thing that we're doing. It's just sending out a letter of guidance. We don't have to talk about concerns at all. I think only the first sentence and the last sentence are important, or the first paragraph and the last paragraph. Everything in the middle doesn't help. You send out a letter of guidance to help a physician improve his or her practice, and it's not disciplinary action, it's not reportable.
It's so funny that you were saying that you say that, Mike, because I was just reading through this again and looking at it and going, why do we have all that other stuff in there? All we really need to do is say, you know, you had a complaint against you. These were the concerns that we found upon investigation. You know, here's what our recommendations for further education are, be blah, 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 call it good. I actually would agree with you.
I agree as well.
Yeah, all the other provisions are just vestiges of the old draft, the previous draft. So if all you're doing is issuing a letter of guidance, say we're issuing a letter of guidance, it's not disciplinary action, it's not, there's no findings, it's not reportable.
We
Well,
do have
if
one
they
hand
want to-
raised. Dr. Bundy has his hand raised, so. Do you want to hear from him?
Whose hand was raised?
Dr. Bundy.
Oh, yeah, please let Dr. Bundy speak, please.
Go ahead, Dr. Bundy.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether you want this thought or not. Usually in situations like this, having listened to the back and forth, it maybe to frame this a little bit more positively is kind of the trick, right? So I just had an idea that instead of saying alleged and practice concerns and some of that, you might change it to something along the lines of a letter of guidance to address practice areas that may benefit from support, and that the alleged areas for support may be addressed through education. An area of support is something that is how did I have it here? This plan may decrease the risk of a future violation of the Uniform Disciplinary Act. Something along those. I mean, I'm not trying to wordsmith this for you, but you see, if you frame it in terms of a very supportive, that you're just trying to support a practice area, it doesn't even call it a problem, because once you're saying that you're really closing this, you're determining it's not a problem, but you do have maybe some ideas about how to support a particular area of practice. Helpful, solicited advice, because the individual is asking to do this program, right? So that's my comment, or at least an idea. And then I think Mike had some good thoughts about how to simplify this a little bit too.
So real quick, Dr. Bundy, could you repeat what you said at the beginning to address practice areas, something of support?
Area for support.
That could benefit from support, something like that. Chris, correct me if I'm getting this wrong. So we need to alter the second sentence too, since it addresses practice concerns.
Well, and you guys were talking about possibly eliminating that sentence.
Yeah, we didn't like alleged practice concerns.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah, you could just put a period after that and call it good.
I like it that way too.
So then, yeah, we have a sense there that this plan may decrease the risk. And again, Chris, correct me if I've got this wrong. This plan may decrease the risk of future violations of the Uniform Disciplinary Act.
Yes.
And I think instead of calling it a plan, I would say this letter of guidance may decrease the risk of.
Or maybe you even would want to say may decrease the risk of a future complaint, because this almost implies, when you say violation, that there was some violation here. And I think even putting that in is a little much, because you're really trying to say this is something we're doing relative to a complaint.
Well, I think that would change the original intention of that sentence. The reason we first developed this type of a clinical support program, educational program, is because it doesn't rise to the level or result in uniform disciplinary action. So if you just say decrease the risk of future complaint, even future complaint doesn't all result in the disciplinary action. It doesn't all involve violation of the UDA. It's only those that does not violate the UDA as the described in the statute that we would consider maybe can through this type of education program. So the last sentence would change the meaning of the original purpose of this program, in my opinion.
I agree with Dr. Yu, and I would say that it doesn't help you in any way. I think you could still put a period after support. It's actually speculative. It may, but it may not. So putting it in there isn't very helpful. And then I would say put a period after support and change could to may.
Amelia, I would say that you could say in the first sentence, the purpose of the clinical support program is to proactively support physicians through resources to address or educational resources or something like that. I mean, it comes out in the letter, but I think you could just say some sort of educational resources or other resources.
And then actually going along with that, Melanie, the second sentence, instead of saying this program, these resources may decrease the risk. And I actually want to come back to Yangling's comment because philosophically we were looking at this from that perspective of the preventing a violation. So I might consider, and please feel free to disagree, these resources may decrease the risk of a future complaint or possible violation of the UDA.
Yeah, I think it should a future violation of the UDA. Otherwise, this would apply to any situation could apply. Certainly, you can say this is discretion of the commission, but anyone outside read this, this could use any complaint could be used for clinical support. So I think, Bob's suggestion, this resources may decrease the risk of future complaint and future violation of a UDA.
Do we
I
need
would
the last
recommend
sentence
to
at
add that.
all?
Just add, this resources may decrease the risk of future complaint and violation of the UDA. Or violation of the UDA.
I was going to say, or possible violation of the UDA, just to soften it a little bit.
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine. Possible.
Yeah, so I really appreciate your suggestions, Dr. Bundy. I think this does make it more positive and supportive in frame.
I'm just thinking, for anyone who read this letter or this policy, there are only 2 paragraphs. First say why we have this. The second is this is not discipline action, will not be reportable. Don't you think they would say, how do I do this? How does this process? What is your process? Don't you think that somewhere someone would ask that question?
If so, it'll probably come to me.
Right. So do you want to spell this out in here, or you want people just to go to Amelia to ask about that?
Well, rules really aren't a place where we should be like spelling out our processes. So.
Okay. But somewhere we're going to have a separated documentation about how this answer people's questions. Someone say, I don't want to do it, then you have some rules. If someone say, I want to do it, then you have a set of rules, right?
Well, it's no longer like a program that they either do or do not sign up for or voluntarily participate in. It's just a letter.
Okay. Okay, so they can just take the educational material recommended run, whether they can do it, they want to do or not, and that would be, you know, on their own, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so we're still, calling it a program here. The title is Clinical Support Program. Sub 1 starts right off the purpose of a clinical support program. So do we need to do some wordsmithing there?
I guess you could do clinical support letter of guidance
And I was just thinking that.
and then the program in the dash.
Yeah, and then
I mean-
change it all the way through it too. I know that sounds redundant, but I think it continues to spell it out and bring the meaning more clearly.
So are we keeping 2, 3, 4, 5, 6?
So let's look at them.
I mean, I like Mike's comment. We can look at it, but I thought Mike Farrell made it very brief and it wasn't the same thing over and over again.
And I think somewhere we need to save the sentence that the letter does not represent a commission finding.
I would agree with that.
And the other thing I'm just thinking of is, I'm not sure if we need to indicate, when this would be issued. Could this be issued after CMT or only after a case has been presented to a panel? At any point during the process, do we need to say something about that? I'm just trying to think about it. If I'm kind of outside, not a member of the commission, not sure what this is about, I read this rule. I'd like to, do I want to have some understanding of when the commission might issue this letter?
My thought would be that this wouldn't be after CMT because of the minimal evidence or investigation that we would have, that this would be after the investigation and after the panel review.
That's what I thought as well. I mean, it's hard to do CMT. You have so little information. It's one-sided as well.
Well,
Right.
and we'd be sending it on every complaint that we get. I mean,
That's
if these
right.
allegations are true, you should go educate yourself. So
I mean, do we need to say that somewhere? Again, I'm not necessarily advocating for that, just asking the question.
I don't know that we need to. I think that,
So
I don't think so. I don't think
Karen,
we
you
need
agree?
to.
Okay.
Amelia,
Anyone
I think you need to put under 2, though, a clinical support letter of guidance needs to be in that first line. Sorry, I think just all those need to be changed.
are we keeping that first sentence of 2?
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I don't think we need that. I think it's
No, let's
redundant
get rid of
with
it.
1.
Yeah, good.
That was just the sentence I wanted to keep. It's there. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. So 3 and 4, kind of addressing what I was saying a minute ago. The question is, do we need those?
I think if we keep 3, we would probably have to define, like was suggested, what a pattern is. How many is a pattern? Things like that. So
I think we're
I would
all,
take it out.
we all agreed that this would only be after, an
I get
investigation.
rid of 3.
Do we want to keep 4 in any format as is or modified? Thoughts?
I
Well, I
think
think
this,
if you're trying to stay away from practice concerns, you need to stay away from that word then.
Yeah, we definitely have to modify that if we want to keep it.
well, and this talks about where we're going to do this then, not after CMT, but following the investigation of the complaint or a mandatory report. So what did we change it to?
Just be
Alleged
like-
practice concern. What did we change it to up above? I can't remember.
Well, I think we
wouldn't
could
we
just
just say
say,
that
just a
may
clinical
issue?
support letter of guidance, may be issued following an investigation. The commission may issue a clinical support letter of guidance.
There you go.
I'm
I don't
not
think
sure
we need
we
anything
should-
more now.
number 4. I don't know, that's more of an internal thing of
Mhm.
our, do you think it matters to people? I mean, do you think they know what it means?
I think you have to say the case is being closed because it doesn't say that yet. So thinking like Dr. Small suggested, someone from the outside thinks, when does this happen and why does it happen? So
Well, it seems then you should take the language saying that it's close, that it doesn't represent discipline, whatever it is, and put that up early, right? That's important, This is more of a temporal sequence.
and I think the sentence about not representing a finding needs to follow this sentence in number 4.
You
Okay.
could have combined 2 and 4. Just add the sentence right at the end of number 4.
This is Heather, and I'm just, if this is just a letter that's going to have, say we're closing your complaint, here's some resources based on what the allegations were that you might want to take a look at. I don't even know if you need a rule for that at all. I mean, you do that sort of right now under A3, so is it even meet the definition of a rule with just this sort of outline of a letter? I would want to look at that because I don't even know if you need a rule for this.
That's what I think. You could have just write a letter 3 and say, here's some educational materials and links. Please take a look at it. That's it. Because if you close the case, it's not going to be in the public website. It's not going to be reported to the data bank anyway.
So are we,
Go ahead, Amelia, please.
so with the A3 letter, so we're the only ones that call it A3, by the way. It's actually complainant unique closure, or complaint unique closure is the name of that closure code. So are we closing it uniquely? No, not in these situations, not really. Either we're closing it because evidence doesn't support a violation, or whatever the other one is that I can't remember.
Well, you could just, I mean, those codes really aren't legally necessary. I mean, they're just a way that you guys collect your data. So
Right.
you could make up your own closure code for this and then just have a stock letter. And then ask the RCM what resources they want to append to it.
So this goes back to, I'm going to make a couple comments here. One is this goes back to what I said before, and an issue some of us have been struggling with for my entire time on the commission, which is, again, the legislature has not given us authority to send out a letter of education, a letter of concern, whatever you want to call it. My personal opinion, which is obviously not a legal opinion, is if we are going to do something like this, we need some documentation that says this is what we're doing. The other thing is, I was going to comment before and I didn't, but Amelia touched upon that. The use of the A3 closure has really drifted considerably since I've been on the commission, and it was intended to be for very rare circumstances where there was really something unique about the reason a case was being closed. Such as, I had a case in the last couple of years where there were violations, but the physician had unfortunately passed away. The A3 closure was not intended to be the way we're using it now, and the way we're using it now is because we haven't had the authority to provide these kind of comments to physicians or PAs in any other way.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would see us, being able to do this and then going back to the intent of the A3 closure. So that's just my editorial comment.
And to add to
I
that, when our new database system comes online, whenever that happens, we will be moving away from closure codes. You'll either close it or do discipline. At CMT, you'll close it or you'll authorize it. There won't be like this separation of we're closing it this way or we're closing it that way. We're moving away from that. In fact, we've eliminated several closure codes over the last few years. So, because either they weren't used or they were inappropriate or whatever was decided. So just keep that in mind.
Okay, I would take my comments back. I think that from an insider, I can sort of now, after hearing your discussion, see the difference between A3 and this letter. This letter is more formalized about, even we don't call it a concern, but it's still a concern. That's why we're doing this. Otherwise, we will not pass the materials. But A3, for anyone read letter, it said it closed. There's no action need to be taken. So it has a little different, now I just think about it, have a little different meaning about it. And so I think formalize a letter to say, expressing in a way how you see it. There is a concern. We hope you would improve your practice based on, the complaint we received. And I think it's still probably better than a simple A3 closure. I'll walk back my thought.
Other comments?
And to Heather's point, I mean, if we can legally create a closure letter without putting it in rule, I mean, I think we could do that. It's just we don't have a mechanism with the systems we use now to be able to do that.
May I make a comment? When you were asking for comments, Dr. Small, can I make a comment?
Yeah, definitely.
It's Chris Bundy, sorry, for not introducing first. So you may have talked about this in other workshops. I'm sorry to be kind of joining at this late juncture, but I'm looking at this from the external perspective. There are lots of different types of credentialing questions out there that you all are very well aware of that people have to deal with. And so if this letter, or whatever this is going to be, identifies a quote unquote practice concern, there are entities out there that might view that as a finding, even though it's not a formal discipline. Just like a STID has adverse professional consequences to individuals, even though it's not intended to be disciplinary. And I think Mike wrote an excellent article in the Journal of Medical Regulation about all the confusion that the ABMS has around the different kinds of things that emanate from state medical boards and what they mean and whether they should affect maintenance of certification or not. I'm just thinking from my advocacy work with participants who have different types of actions with the medical board or the commission, I should say. Does framing it in this way create difficulties for that individual that the commission does not intend?
But if we don't say practice concern, I thought we struck that language from it, and it's not, I mean, in essence, who would know, right? If the case is closed.
Sometimes I don't know who would know, other than if it's in the public record that something like this was issued and it's discoverable by an outside credentialing.
Closed.
So
right? Is that what would happen?
Yeah, even if a case is closed after investigation or, you know, at CMT, it's still, it's not reportable. It doesn't get reported out, but credentialers can get that information. I think, you know, they often email us and ask for open, closed complaints. It doesn't matter how it was closed. They want to know if there was ever a complaint about this particular provider. So they do get that information. They may not get the details, but they know that they had 4 closed complaints.
But Amelia, would they say, I mean, because this comes and the case is closed, they would know they'd have a complaint, but they won't know. Do they have access to this sort of information, which mention some educational resource in that area?
Only if they
Right.
request a copy of all of the complaints that we have on file for a particular provider. That's the only time they would see the information.
But they would get something anyway from if they, you know, even if, I mean, they wouldn't get this letter, but they'd get something else if it was closed, right? And so they'd
Right.
still access it, request all of it.
Mhm.
So I'm not sure the letter would be harmful.
I may have misunderstood the conversation. I understood Dr. Yu suggesting that maybe we needed to put some of that language around a practice concern back into the letter. Maybe I wasn't hearing that correctly, but I do think that when you go down that path of it means something when the commission says that they have identified a practice concern, that will mean something to outside entities.
Yeah, that's not what I suggested. What I was saying is I try to clarify my own mind between A3 and this letter. And I said, whatever you call it, it's still there in our mind. If we issue this letter, there was a concern because we encourage them to, you know, take a look at their educational material. Otherwise, they don't need it.
That may have been my mistake in terms of where the
No problem. No problem. I mentioned the words anyway. So, but I would say, you know, Public Records Act, you know, we have the law, and you can request for the records. You can still say something. I don't know how much detail, but you can still find out the complaint and whether the letter issued.
And Amelia, if you could just scroll back up a little bit. Okay. And so I think you can completely cross out number 2 because we moved that last sentence. And then what's now number 4 becomes number 2.
I'll fix that part later.
Okay. And then let's see what else is there. Okay, so let's look at 5, 6. I don't know that we really
I didn't
need
think 5 is
5.
necessary. I'd get rid of it.
Agree.
Yeah, I agree.
Good. I don't know that we need 6 either. I think that's sort of implied with what we said above and what's now number 2.
Yeah, it's redundant.
I think we should keep 7.
Agree.
Agree.
7, I think 7 becomes 3 then, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, let me
Yeah.
do some stuff here.
Yeah, do you want to?
Yeah, it becomes 3.
If you can accept changes and then we can see what it looks like. Probably a few extra periods there in number 1.
Mm-hmm.
If we change like this so drastically, do we need another call for public comments period?
Yes. I mean, you can put this forward for, it won't be next week, but probably the November meeting. And if they approve the new draft, then there'll be a 30-day comment period before any hearing we schedule for this rule.
And then this will be changed in the physician assistant as well.
Correct. They'll be identical, except it'll say physician assistant if it says physician anywhere.
Yes,
It does in number 1, yeah.
Okay.
good.
That's the only place.
I have a small suggestion.
Yeah.
The second sentence in paragraph 2 really belongs, I think, in paragraph 3.
His second sentence in section 2,
Section 2, yeah.
this one?
Yeah.
It belongs where?
In paragraph 3.
Okay, down here.
Yeah.
Before or after non-reportable?
I think before.
Before. Yeah.
Mike, since you were one of the original draftees, what are your thoughts about this in its current format as we're looking at it?
I think it's fine. Melanie said that Micah and I drafted it. Actually, this approach was drafted by Micah. I think it's short, simple. I would love to get Heather's thoughts on this. I guess one reason I would say I would like to have a rule is to provide some legal support for doing this, because we don't have specific support for issuing a letter of concern or a letter of guidance. And this provides at least a little bit. I think it's simple, it's straightforward, and this is kind of the direction that the panel last time was kind of leaning toward, away from being too harsh and coming up to the line of discipline and going back to, if we have a concern, let's just help the practitioner in a very mild way and not monitor it, but just provide resources to him or her to improve his or her practice.
Were you,
Could I
go ahead.
could I ask a question?
Sure.
It's the last paragraph, last sentence in the first paragraph. These resources may decrease the risk. Is it correctly the reading? Is it resources decrease the risk, or is taking the education would decrease the action decrease the risk, or is the material decrease the risk?
Yeah, we really need to change that sentence because it doesn't make any sense. The
How
review,
would you think
the use of these resources.
Do you need that sentence?
I don't think so, but
I don't think so.
I don't either.
Or maybe these resources are provided to help decrease the risk. So that means it's a purpose. So it doesn't relate to whether the provider going to take the study the resources, but we provided the resources in a hope to decrease the risk of future complaint or possible violation. Is that right? It's not the resources decrease, it's the action, either commission's action to provide the resources is intends to decrease the risk.
I think we should just get rid of that sentence.
I agree. Get rid of it. I don't think it's needed. I think that if you get one of these letters, the message is clear. If you wish to follow it, you don't. Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure if we should decrease. I don't think that's a big confusion there. As we said, why we have this letter, we have a history of why we have this letter. Otherwise, anyone can get this letter. Does that mean if it's from an outsider, from a provider side, from commission, we think we can issue this letter to anyone? I mean, all we need to say, the resources are provided to decrease the risk of a future complaint or possible violation. That's still very positive.
And I think that would be, Dr. Yu, I think I understand what you're saying, but I still think that the sentence, the resources may decrease the risk of a future complaint or possible violation. The only way that's going to happen is if the physician or physician assistant uses those resources or education. We may hope and wish or pray that they do that, but this sentence isn't going to make them do that. Does that make sense?
Sort of, but also this also guide us under what circumstances we will issue this letter.
Well, but we already know what the circumstances are that we would issue the letter.
Well, with clinical support letter guidance, I assuming this is also guide the commission of why we issue the letter, not A3, right? It's not just say the receiving side. So I still personally like the last sentence to be there. Either you want to keep it that way or just simply work it, easily be worked. Still have as a guidance for both commission and for the providers.
So I can see this from both sides of this discussion. But I will say, I think Yang Ling has a point from the perspective of, going back to something I've said a couple of times, and I harp on this all the time in my day job. We have to think about what this looks like to the outside world, not just inside the commission. So if I'm a physician or PA out in practice and I'm looking at this, do I want to know what circumstances this may be issued? Does that second sentence help me understand the circumstances in which I might get one of these letters?
Well, Bob, I agree. It probably would provide more information to someone who's unfamiliar with this.
Right. Yeah, if I were commit a provider, when I read this letter, and we took out the sentence that said commission has a sole discretion to issue this letter. Okay, we don't have the sentence now. So if I read this letter, I would say every time I would ask for, give me education resources. I'm done. I'm not going to do anything. So when you issued a disciplinary action, you have to explain it. But with the sentence there, this is very clear under what conditions that this is apply and applicable. And there would be no confusion from both sides.
Teresa, thoughts?
I can understand that as well. Does it make more sense if we pull it out of there and put it as a sub A? If we're going to keep it in there, or does that just make it muddier?
Well, I think it just needs to be reworded if we keep it.
Yeah.
So let's work on rewording it then. So I think there were a couple
We just
suggestions
say
before, but yeah, go ahead.
like the use of these resources by the physician.
How about
The
just use of these resources? I don't think we need by the physician.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. It's an action to that may decrease the risk. Yeah.
And then can we change, I'm going back to the first sentence now. Can we change through to by providing?
That's better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that too.
I think we need to put, I know it's redundant, but put educational resources may decrease the risk.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. Other comments, thoughts, disagreements? Amelia, were there other comments we received from outside that we hadn't gone through yet?
There was one other comment. It is from the Washington State Anesthesiologists Association. Oh, State Society of Anesthesiologists. But with the way you've reworked this new draft so dramatically, I don't know that we need, I mean, you can obviously read it, but I don't know that we need to address it.
Yeah.
I will send these, or I'll post the new draft to the website, and just like I did with the last one, send a call out for comments. So
Can you scroll up just a little bit on this letter now? Okay, now the other part, now the bottom part. Okay, right, that's good. Yeah, I think we've changed a lot of this with what we've just edited.
well, in this paragraph about confidentiality protections, as we've mentioned in the past, all complaints are subject to public disclosure, whether they're in this program or not. So
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Can you scroll down a bit more, Amelia? Oh, that's it. All right.
and interestingly, we don't have a CR 102 yet for this. So
They were concerned about whether the program is truly voluntary. It seems this is mooted now, right? Based on those three paragraphs, is more clear than ever. This is a totally voluntary, right?
We
it's not even-
basically, yeah, we eliminated the program. We're just sending out a letter.
yeah,
Right.
there's no participation piece now. So
Right.
So how about let's take one more look at what we have proposed at this point.
Okay, I have a. Could I throw a thought out there, Bob?
Go ahead.
I think it's good out of the three. Now I'm thinking about sexual misconduct allegation, you know, we sometimes have these things that you really couldn't say, decide that there is truly a violation. You have the patient complaint, you have providers who said that there's no way to confirm it. But sometimes those complaints does shows a concern by the commission members, and sometimes there is one or two similar concerns about it. You know, so are we just gonna say, well, this concern, here's the material that you need to be more respected to patient boundary issue, and then we just let it be? Is that the intention with this one? I'm more probably think about not just records, you know, say didn't document this, didn't document that. I'm more thinking about, you know, sometimes the sexual misconduct allegation.
A lot
If
of
you
those come
close
under,
complaint, if you close the complaint without taking action, that's what you're doing.
Aaron, you were going to say something?
yeah, I was going to say, these complaints are closed, you know, and so we would just provide information about how to talk to people, like such as you hear people like, I'd like to examine you, and I'm going to listen to your heart and lungs, you know, as an example, as opposed to just doing it. And those kind of, there's educational resources. So these complaints are closed. That doesn't mean if another complaint comes through, and then you have 10 of these complaints, that the commission wouldn't take action on a future one, but these are all closed, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
most sexual misconduct things are ones of language and how they're conducting a physical exam for us.
Okay.
I think you know, the decision to send out a letter is going to be made at the panel, you know, at the time decision is made to close the case, and the RCM may recommend closing the case, but we should send out a letter of guidance. And you know, some of them may not be black and white and may require some discussion in the panel to make a decision about that.
Yeah.
Sexual misconduct cases are obviously can get very thorny, and you know, we have to be very careful about what we said if we wanted to even send out a letter of guidance in that kind of case. But we can start by sending a letter to Governor Cuomo. I couldn't help me. I hit myself on that one. Any other comments about the wording of the draft here?
I like it.
You know, I like it too. I think it is much better than one which is like discipline light. This is I think much more positive and can help educate folks should they choose to want to be educated.
I think you know, kudos to Mike, whatever hand you had in this, and also Dr. Bundy, if you're still listening, for helping us really reframe this. Amelia, what is next?
So if you all vote to approve this draft language, then I will get it put up on our website. I will do a call for comments, and as the comments come in, I'll review them, and then we'll figure out if we need to do another workshop. If we don't need to do another workshop, then, oh, Dr. Bundy has his hand up again. Hold on. Go ahead, Dr. Bundy.
Sorry, my mistake. I didn't mean to have my hand up that time, but thank you, Dr.
Okay.
Small. It's a pleasure to be included. Thank you.
Glad to have
So
you here.
if we decide we don't need, like if we don't receive any like significant comments or things like that, then we will bring the draft language to the policy committee in November and then to the full commission if the policy committee approves it on that Friday in November. And then if they approve the CR 102 process, then I'm hoping we will have a rules hearing next April.
Okay.
So do you need a motion?
Yes,
So
please.
Okay.
I will accept the motion to approve this as written.
Well, I would move to accept the language of the draft here for this guidance.
Second? Second, okay. All in favor? There's only 3 of you. Okay, I take it that's unanimous. Nobody's opposed, so the motion passes.
All right, that is all we have unless anyone likes to discuss anything else. We can end early. There's no hands raised, so it looks like we're good.
All right, great. All right, thanks, everybody. That was
See
very
everybody in a week or
productive.
so.
Bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.
Bye.